Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, Victoria. It's wonderful to have you here with us today on Zoom, or if you happen to be watching later in the week, to have you with us by way of a recording. It's always special to see you, especially when we can't be together in person. We do hope that we're going to be able to remedy that before too long, and that we will all be back together again, hopefully by the end of February or perhaps a bit before. But we're being very careful with our protocols and not wanting to expose anyone to any significant danger of getting this virus, which seems to be or seems to have been so contagious. And gratefully, it is declining right now. So let's just know that it's on its way out for good. No, nothing else coming, and take the precautions that we need to take so that we can all be safe and well. So I would like to invite this morning Reverend Rachel Hazel to give us our opening treatment. Rachel?
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you. I've written it behind. I'm not sure how visible it is, but I'll speak. God is in everything I see because God is in my mind, shining out of my mind and lighting on everything it touches. The beauty of every flower comes through my heart first. The kindness I see in others comes through my kindness first. The awe I see in a sunrise rises up in my heart first. Thank you. Thank you for blessing my mind, and so I may bless my whole world. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Rachel. And now we are going to be blessed with some music by Darlene Haynes, our wonderful director of music. Darlene?
Thank you, Carrie. A song that we're all familiar with, Down in My Soul. I feel the Spirit down in my soul. I feel the Spirit down in my soul. I feel the Spirit down in my soul. And the whole wide world is my home. I feel our blessings down in my soul. I feel our blessings down in my soul. I feel our blessings down in my soul. And the whole wide world is my home. I feel so grateful down in my soul. I feel so grateful down in my soul. I feel so grateful down in my soul. And the whole wide world is my home. Oh, yes, it is. And the whole wide world is my home.
Oh, thank you, Darlene.
Oh,
That
you're
was
welcome.
wonderful. I love that song. And I love that concept too, just thinking about the whole wide world as my home. Because really we are all connected one to the other through spirit, through this intelligence that is in us and through everything. And so the whole wide world is our home, and everyone in it is related to us one way or another. When we get ourselves out of the way of just thinking that we are all by ourselves, our own unique selves on this planet. So Oh, lovely reminder this morning. Thank you. And then as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, again, of psychologists saying that we are a product of our environment. Whatever it is that we're thinking, however we're behaving, whatever way we're expressing on this planet, we're a product of our environment. And, the old saying from when I was a kid is the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And as I have often said before, in the case of my tree, I really wanted to roll away from it as quickly as possible and to plant seeds elsewhere and to grow a totally different kind of tree. But what does this mean that, that we're a product of our environment? It really means that we are absorbed in the attitudes and the behaviors of those who are around us. You know, whoever we're hanging out with, um, whoever we spend the most time with, whatever we spend the most time with. If we're upset about our lives, if the way that things are working out for us, if it's not the way that we planned them to be, then maybe we're still leaning against the wrong tree or sitting under the wrong tree. And it's time to do something about that. And I remember years ago reading a story about a little girl, and I honestly don't remember if I've shared this or not. She was 5 years old, and her parents had just moved into a new home, and beside them was a big empty lot. And after a few months, there started to be some activity on that lot. Someone was building a new home, and there were a lot of construction workers around. And the little girl was very, very curious. And so she used to show up every day just to see what was going on. And the workers made her their mascot. And so they gave her odd jobs to do, just little things that she could manage. And she was feeling very important part of the group. And at the end of the week, they handed her a little envelope and it had a $10 bill in it. And they said, that's your pay for the work that you've done this week. Well, she was so excited. She was thrilled. She went running home to her mom and showed it to her. And her mom said, well, on Monday, or no, I guess it was on Saturday. It was an American story. Of course, we have Canadian banks that are now open on Saturdays too. And her mom said, we'll go to the bank tomorrow and we're going to open an account for you. And so she took her little girl to the bank, and um, the account manager was setting everything up. And she was really impressed with this little girl. And she asked her how she made the money. And she said, well, I was working on the construction site that's right next door to us. I was a worker with the men on the job, and they gave me jobs to do every day, and then I got paid for it. And the account manager was congratulating her for being so industrious. And then she asked her if she was going to go back the next week. And the little girl sat for a minute and she said, well, if that dumbass Stewart gets the damn sheetrock, I can hardly even get the words out. If that dumbass Stewart gets the damn sheetrock, we'll be able to get to work. Well, I'm sure her mother was apoplectic. And I mean, you can only imagine how you would feel if your beautiful little daughter all of a sudden came up with that kind of expression. And the thing is, it's such an example of how we are a product of our environment. I mean, in her innocence, she had no idea that she should not say things like that. And the workers didn't consider the fact that she was a child and that perhaps they should be a bit more careful with their language around her. I mean, I guess it could have been a lot worse, but it just showed how this innocent little child just so easily picked up what was going on around her. And so when we think about our environment, we tend to think about our physical environment, but in fact, we have a physical environment and we have a spiritual environment. And as little children, we don't have the opportunity to choose our physical environment. That's a given. With our parents or wherever we happen to live as little children, that's the environment. The schools that we go to, the children that we play with, and so on. But we are all born with spirit inside us. We are spirit having a human experience, which we say over and over and over again in this teaching. And so we're containers of God. I really like to use that expression. We're containers of God. But the thing is that God doesn't stop with what is inside the container. It is everywhere, everywhere that we can imagine it, in everyone and everything. And in the past, I've often used the expression that we're all just buckets of God. Imagining God as a vast ocean, And if somebody took, took a bucket of water out of the ocean, that would still be water from the ocean. It wouldn't be water from something else. And so, I would say we're all buckets of God stuff. And some of those buckets look different from others. Some might be a rusty old pail, another one might be a wooden bucket, another one might be ceramic, another one might be something that is painted with beautiful flowers. That they can all be different, and that represents how we individualize God. And perhaps something that's easier to comprehend than that is thinking again about water, thinking about the ocean, thinking about the waves on the ocean. Each wave that's coming in is an individual wave, but it certainly isn't separated from the ocean. We can see that so clearly. It's still part of it, and yet the wave has a name that is different from the ocean itself. And so if we can start to comprehend how spirit works in us and through us and through everything and connects us one to the other, that great vast oneness that we all are, then perhaps it helps us better to understand the truth of who we are, and to realize that there is no place where God leaves off and where we begin. And the question is, are we spending our time in the material world all the time with our simply focused upon the physical rather than upon our hearts, rather than upon our spiritual nature, because that makes all of the difference in our lives. And the physical, as we know, is temporary. We're not here in physical form forever. There's a point where we step out of our physical garments. But the essential part of us, the essence of who we are, goes on forever and ever and ever. It always was. There's no place where it began, no place where it ends. It just is. And so realizing this, we really need to understand that our spiritual selves are eternal. And are we willing to grow beyond the physical while we're here in physical form? Are we ready to grow beyond that? Are we ready to grow beyond the material? Are we ready to go into that deeper, deeper place? That place where we can actually feel the presence of God. It's such an important thing for us to consider, because we can't do a lot about our environment. I mean, we can move. We can change friends, we can change schools, whatever, but we can't do a huge amount about it. It's our inner work that makes the change in our outer. When we're ready to make that change within, when we're ready to recognize who we are and to claim who we are, and to practice the spiritual connection, then everything in our outer world begins to change as well, and it changes for the better. And so the question is, are we willing to grow beyond our physical selves? Are we willing to claim the spiritual selves that we are, that magnificence, that enormity that we are? Margaret Meade, the great anthropologist, said that to believe that we can't do anything about the environment is the greatest sin of all, because we always have a choice. No matter what is coming up for us in our lives, we have a choice. We may not want to believe that we do. We may say, oh, well, you might have a choice, but I don't. But the fact is that we always have a choice, and some of those choices can be difficult to make. But the thing is, when we are guided, divinely guided, by what is right for us and for others in our environment, in our world, then we know the choice that we need to make. And the thing is, if we're just in our heads with the choices, we're probably not going to get the response that we need. We really need to go into a deeper place. We need to go into our intuitive selves, which really lives within our heart centers. That's where we get the truth about what it is that we're to do. And it's really easy when we get to that place to say, oh, no, 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 no. That can't be right. That's too difficult. But the fact is that that's where the truth is. And if we want to grow beyond our present circumstances, to raise ourselves up to a different way of being, to happiness and joy, to divine connection, then we need to practice being connected. And I know that I say that a lot, but I say it a lot because it's so important. And I say it to myself a lot so that I don't forget, because it's easy for us to get. If we're going to school, for example, or to university, if we only go in for an hour or two, one day a week, we're not going to get very far. And it's the same thing with our spirituality. If we only check in once a week or maybe twice a week for an hour or two, we're not going to get very far. It's like going to school, going to university. It takes commitment, it takes study. But the thing is that as we gain in knowledge and in awareness and in consciousness, everything starts to get much easier. And we find that our lives start to shift in such an amazing way without having to work at it really hard. And wouldn't that be wonderful? And I keep telling myself, if I want to make shifts in my life, then I really need to let God do it. I have to get this monkey mind out of the way, because it can trip me up just about any time. So it's not about us living in our past, this growth that we're going through. We need to release our past. It's really not important. Principle has no precedent, as Ernest Holmes said. Ernest Holmes, our founder. Whatever happened before this moment does not have to influence the rest of my day today or tomorrow, because I get to choose. I get to choose what I'm going to think. I get to choose who I'm going to hang out with. I get to choose how I'm going to speak. I get to choose what's important to me right here and right now in this moment. And if I don't like what's going on right now, or if I didn't like what was going on earlier this morning, then I get to make another choice. And the question is, do I have the courage to follow through with the choice that I make? And that's where we also have to know that where God is, we have all of the support that we need. We don't need to worry about that. There is this divine knowing, this divine intelligence that will not steer us in a wrong direction. It will take us to the place that we're meant to be, according to what our deepest desires are, and according to what is for our highest and best. And we're constantly being invited, I guess is the right word, to elevate ourselves to new growth. And that's what our center is all about. It's about growing people, growing us spiritually, growing us into a higher dimension, into a higher awareness than where we have been before. And you don't have to be a minister to do that. I mean, many of you have taken lots of classes, and those classes are all so helpful in getting to a place of spiritual awakening, a higher awareness than where we were before. Many people do go on in this particular teaching to become ministers, because they keep on studying until, the next step is ministry. But you don't have to do that. And I was remembering last night that in my practitioners, they had studied to be practitioners first. And then they all went into ministerial training. And of that group, it was a 2-year course. And of that group, 9 people stayed in ministerial class. They gradually fell away because that wasn't what they wanted to do with their lives. And then after we graduated, we had a similar experience where we actually became ministers who had our own churches, our own centers, but truly it's the center. And so it's not that they believed anything less, it's just that their lives took on other directions, and they took their light, they've taken their lights out into the community. And they have extraordinary gifts that they are sharing everywhere. And so it doesn't matter really what degrees we have. in anything. What matters is what's in our hearts. What matters is our consciousness. What matters is how much we have grown and learned along the way. And then, we go where we feel safe to be. There's an inner calling in each of us, and it comes at different times in our lives. An inner calling to embrace the truth of who we are, you know, and to understand that we are abundant beings. There's no scarcity in our lives except that we think there might be. And scarcity doesn't make us prosperous. We truly have to understand that there is nothing that is withheld from us except that we make it so. And so we have to release those feelings, release feelings of lack, release feelings of not being good enough, of not deserving, whatever that might be, and allow this great spirit to bless us with everything that life has to offer. You know, there are a lot of, I speak about prosperity today in terms of money, because so many people that I have met throughout my life have limited feelings about money, not just about, but they don't think kindly upon people who do have money. And I've always found that to be a curious thing. I mean, they think if they're wealthy that they must have got it by some ill-devised means, and and they think that people who have a lot of money should be giving it away. And most people who do have a lot of money do give a lot of it away. Um, I think Reverend Jennifer said this one morning when she was speaking, and I wasn't at the center, but I came across it in a video with Denzel Washington. He said, "I've made hundreds of millions of dollars in my life." And he said, "It's not what you have that matters. It's what you do with what you have. It's what you do with what you have." And I think that is so important for us to remember. And he said, the line that I just love, Jennifer and I have laughed about it many times, is, "You've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul." And I think that's just so incredible. And I also was thinking last night of Oprah Winfrey, who said, "I can never be poor enough to make somebody else rich." This is a woman who is a huge humanitarian, and she gives a lot away. But she said, I could never be poor enough to make somebody else rich. It is consciousness that does that. And I remember Mike Todd, the film director from many, many years ago, saying, from time to time he was without money. And he always said, "I may be broke, but I'm not poor." He said, "Poverty is consciousness." And so whatever it is that we need to work on, it may be financial lack, it may be relationships, it may be, um, could be just about anything in our lives. It might be a job, might be just something that we've always wanted to do, to travel or whatever. We need to remember that it is all about consciousness, and clear the decks. And the way, Reverend Joanna did a beautiful meditation this morning, and it was so lovely to go into that space, and to feel that connection. And it's the place where our minds get out of the way and where everything is possible. Pure God stuff is possible. The divine givingness of the universe that only knows to say yes. And so let us think our highest thoughts and be the best that we can be, so that what the universe is saying yes to is higher and better for each one of us. It's kind of like being in an inner beauty salon. We go to beauty salons or spas for the external, but we go to God for the internal. That's our internal beauty salon, and that's where we are groomed and kept beautiful, because we practice it in the same way that in the morning we get up and brush our teeth and comb our hair and bathe, doing whatever our morning routine happens to be. We need to do that same inner work on ourselves, and that way we can grow in consciousness. And at a deep level, we are all being called to love, and we are being called, well, in religious science, for example, a few years ago, headquarters sent out what I would call a decree almost from Ken Gordon, who was the head of religious science, the spiritual director at the time. And Ken said, it's time for us to put our our spirituality into action. We can't just be sitting, sitting on a cushion somewhere meditating. That is part of the action, but he said we also have to stand up for what we believe in. And we have to let people know that. And if it means marching in the streets sometimes, then we need to do that. And I'm not referring to the truckers thing that's going on right now in Ottawa. I'm not referring to any of those kinds of things. There's nothing specific that I'm thinking about in terms of today, except that he said that we do need to become active if we want to have change in society. God knows we must be thinking about that as we've been sitting through 2 full years of the pandemic now. And I was remembering, as this thought came to me a couple of days ago, I was remembering a protest in the States. I think it was about 4 years ago, and I can't remember what it was about. It was probably about race, but I'm not sure. And there was some concern that there was going to be looting and fighting in the streets and so on. That's what had been predicted. And so there was this group of protesters who were marching, but they were being led by ministers from 7 or 8 different churches, and I don't remember the city. And the ministers all had their arms linked with one another. And as they marched, every couple of blocks, the ministers would kneel and pray for a moment. And then they would get up and they would continue on. And then they would kneel and pray, continue on, kneel and pray. And by the time they got to the police barricade that had been set up, where they all had their shields and they had pepper spray and, their batons and guns and all the rest of it, there was no fighting going on at all. It was peaceful. They reached out and shook hands with one another. They embraced one another. I thought, wow, what an example of what faith does, of what prayer can do. And I was remembering, we've just passed Martin Luther King Day, and I was remembering what Martin Luther King said to the people who were marching to Selma. And one of them said, what do we do when they start beating us with clubs? What do we do? And he said, do everything you can to look directly into their eyes and send them love. He was a peacemaker, and following in the footsteps of Gandhi. The government of India changed without a shot being fired, without any fighting, because of Gandhi and his peaceful protesting. It was a terrible time and has been a terrible time and continues to be in some places in terms of race. But when we put God into the equation, things start to change, and the power is there. And the power is within each one of us. We are growing in consciousness as beings. We're not meant to wallow in smallness or to play small. It doesn't mean that we're supposed to be going out and protesting or fighting or anything like that. I don't mean to suggest that. But there are things that we can do that we never have thought that was possible for ourselves, because somewhere along the way we came to believe that it wasn't possible. But we can all play on a bigger playing field than we are right now. We can play large by knowing God. And I came across a reading this morning about 10 minutes before we started, and it's in Ernest Holmes' book, A New Design for Living. And I just happened to open it up to this page and what he says. And he uses the term man here because at the time that his books were written, things were not gender neutral. In man, we seem to have that point where heaven and earth meet, a place where the spiritual and the physical meet. The intangible spiritual always becomes the tangible form. But in man, the spiritual retains its identity as spirit and mind, while at the same time being tangible as physical body. Only in this way would it be at all possible for what at first appears to be small, insignificant, and limited to man, and for man to comprehend in any way or to any degree. It's that it is larger than he is. We have to understand that it is larger than we are, that God in us is larger, so much larger than we are, and we can be larger than we are. And I mentioned after Reverend Joanna's meditation this morning that I printed off Marianne Williamson's meditation this morning, and she said, "I allow my dreams to live today." I love that. I allow my dreams to live today. I will not deflect, diminish, or invalidate my dreams today, or concoct excuses for why they can't happen. However outrageous they may seem to be, I allow them to live within me. Today, I will not allow my future to be limited by my beliefs about it. I honor the images of my deeper self and invite them to reveal to me the meaning of their message. I make a space within the temple of my mind for God, the dreamer of all life, to dream his dream through me. And then she does her prayer in her way. Dear God, may I not be restricted by my mortal mind, for in you all things are possible. May I not be limited by the thinking of the world or by the illusions of time and space. May the dreams that you would dream through me be unblocked by thoughts of fear. I allow my dreams to live today. And so it is, she says, amen. And so let us know that we can play larger. We can allow our dreams to live today. You are the ones the world has been waiting for. This is our time. This is a time when beings of light are being awakened, where we are all given the opportunity and the knowledge to awaken to our spiritual magnificence. And the mission of Centers for Spiritual Living worldwide is awakening humanity to its spiritual magnificence. Let's be part of that. Let's know it's possible. Let's do it. Let's go for it. And so it is. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's been a pleasure to see your faces on the screen and to have a chat with you before service. And this is the time that we typically have our offering. And so if you'd like to make a donation to us this morning, because our expenses go on whether or not we're together in our center, you can do that by going to our website, www.cslvictoria.org. And there's a place there where you can donate either by PayPal or credit card or debit card, or you can send an e-transfer to donate@cslvictoria.org. We bless you and we appreciate absolutely everything that you do, all that you give, and who you be. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And thank you for being here today. And I would like to invite Reverend Jennifer to do our benediction today.
Thank you, Reverend Carrie. As we go within and realize our spiritual greatness, make it real as we go into this next week. We're not just our physical self. We're far greater. We're not victims to the spiritual environment. We become masters of our spiritual environment. As we work and study and listen to the wisdom of Reverend Carrie to empower us, meet the world head on, face to face, and be fearless, knowing that we meet our beloved in a disguise, or within everything that comes to us is the presence of God. And as we recognize and be aware and dissolve those disguises, miracles, and the grace of heaven flow through and lift us, carry us, every experience, ease. Thank you, God. And so it is.
Thank you, Reverend Jennifer. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate all of you. Thanks for being with us. I just send you great blessings for the rest of this week and hope to see you back with us next week. Stay safe and stay healthy, and let's just stay in spirit together throughout the rest of this week. Bless you all. Love you all.